tonight's episode, The Vast of Night.
Hi, Tig.
Hi, Eric. You just got done watching the 2019 sci-fi thriller, The Vast of Night.
I did just get done watching that. It is a pseudo-retro, but not really retro film. This film had a really distinct and unique voice I just haven't seen brought to the table by other directors. And this, of course, was by a first-time director. So he really came out of the gate saying, I'm going to do my own thing, and I'm going to do it my way. It's great that it worked out that way. The guy apparently self-funded the whole thing, and I'm glad that that was the case. For people who haven't seen it, Tig, why don't you give a brief explanation of what this is?
Then let me get right to it.
It takes place in the 1950s in like rural America. It has a radio station in town and it starts to receive strange signals. And the whole movie is basically just about that.
And the film itself, primarily concerned with just the two main characters. It's almost all entirely driven purely on dialogue.
I made a biscuit.
No, we don't call them. It's not called a biscuit.
What's
No. A recording is
Hey,
not a
what's
biscuit.
this for? Is this going on the air?
Specifically focused through these two people, the radio DJ and the young woman who occasionally does the the switchboard there in town. That's really kind of all it needs. Plot itself, there's barely anything to it. You could probably do the exact same plot in like a 20-minute TV show episode. That sounds like a criticism. It isn't. The director, Andrew Patterson, really sort of pulls out all the stops and make some really cool, interesting choices to put you in the moment.
What else you got in there?
Just my mouthpiece and some hairpins.
They're not discovering anything that we haven't seen in movies a million times before, especially if you're into that classic era of science fiction. It's kind of a basic classic story. Hey, we've seen some lights in the sky. I wonder what that's all about. The movie opens up with this sort of very wham bam, Aaron Sorkin influenced dialogue scene with the two main characters meeting. The one main character, the DJ, he links up with the switchboard operator, a 16-year-old young woman played by Sierra McCormick, who is just really terrific in this role. No close-ups whatsoever, no cuts. They're just sort of, walking around until finally they walk off away from the basketball game to go and drop her off at the switchboard. And the opening is actually, I found it initially kind of a little off-putting because I was like, oh, is this going to be one of those like Too Clever for Its Own Good movies? I'm a big fan of Wonders. I'm a big fan of like extended long takes. Because it opened the movie, it had me wondering, oh, is this going to be one of those movies that are going to try and be?
Yeah, like the whole movie is going to, like 1917 or whatever, where they try to tie it all together.
Yeah, like 1917 or Birdman, which a lot of people gave that a lot of acclaim, same sort of thing. So a lot of my focus was on just following the movements of the camera, just sort of taking in what it would have taken for them to create that shot.
You couldn't help but focus on it either, because in the beginning, the one thing that made me only focus on that is you don't see the faces for such a long time.
Yes, the first close-up of the movie isn't until 20 minutes into the movie. You've gotten a ton of dialogue from these two characters, and you don't even know what they look like. So those choices of the way it was filmed and the way it was lit in particular add a sense of mounting dread that probably wouldn't be there just based on the script. So they hear this intriguing sound. She becomes obsessed with it, and she ropes him in, and they become obsessed with figuring out what this sound is. And then they get a phone call from somebody who was in the military at one time, who tells us a story about hearing a sound like that, and that's what sort of opens it up. But there's not anything in here that, on paper at least, would make you be like at the edge of your seat, like, oh my God, what is this going to be? And this is terrifying and all that. It's just the way the film's shot, the way it's presented, brings that to the table.
Then the car still works. Oh, and a voice will come over the radio and give you directions. So like, if you're on the highway.
I think where that finally came together for me, I think where everything finally came together for me, incredible scene about a half an hour into the movie. It's a 10-minute long, unbroken take of her operating the switchboard. She's trying to verify what it is. She's losing people in some lines, which is building this sense of like, what's going on here in town? She's going back and forth with him. And it's just, the entire scene is the camera just sitting there and this young woman in front of the switchboard acting, not with anyone else either, because the other voices she's interacting with are off screen. And it's It's a remarkable performance by McCormick, one thing. I mean, she's just great in this scene. She just kills it.
Grace, hi. Can you run over and check on Ethel and Maddie? I tried the Van Ortons, but they're at the game. I'm afraid everyone's at the game right now.
Because she has to own the screen for 10 minutes with nothing else happening, which is really difficult to do. And two, it's just a really effing bold choice by Patterson to allow the scene to play out that way. Because any other director would have had cuts, he would have had music cues, music to inform the audience that they're supposed to be feeling tense right now and things like that. And he doesn't do any of that. He's just like, watch this young woman's building interest and sense of mystery. I thought it was a terrific choice. And that is what finally made me sort of lock in and say, okay, of course it takes place all in one night and it almost takes place in real time.
I'm excited to see what this guy directs next.
Yes. And yeah, anyone who really likes to see interesting directorial choices and a really interesting voice from a director, you're going to get a lot of that here, because there's not only just the oneer that opens up the movie and the long take at the switchboard. There's also an interesting tracking shot that basically gives you the geography of the town. It goes to the three main locations in the town, zipping along the ground in between them and sort of checking in on each town. The way the conversation with the old woman is shot is really interesting. And that actually is probably the spookiest part of the whole movie.
I will explain myself. I'm not some witch, I promise.
Like when it repeatedly fades into an old tube television set.
That's what I've been waiting to ask you. I was curious what you thought about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make, like what he was necessarily trying to get across with that. You think you're going to get these bookends that make it seem as if like this was a TV show all along, or something to that effect. It's almost as if it's suggesting to you that, you know, this is not real. This is a Twilight Zone-esque, you know, kind of thing. And yet the movie doesn't close with that, at least not as far as I recall.
No, I don't think so.
He really wanted to reinforce that idea that he was paying homage to those 50s and 60s science fiction stories. To go back to what you said before, this is like my main takeaway is exactly the same as yours, which is, I really can't wait to see what this guy does next.
Maybe some new director on the scene that'll, you know, shake some stuff up and bring a new idea.
Sort of reminds me of THX 1138, the first feature length by George Lucas. For anyone who hasn't seen it, you really should see it if you want to see an incredibly unique science fiction picture with a voice all its own. Lucas was a terrific director when he first began his career, and THX 1138 is a weird, very interesting, visually stunning, and thought-provoking science fiction picture. Really well worth watching. It was just a little offbeat and weird enough so that it would never go mainstream, but it showed you that, okay, this guy's got some chops. He can probably do something really interesting.
I feel like this movie was more of him showing off his ideas and techniques and things that he can do, more than, like you said, it being a movie that you remember for the story. Agreed.
Yes, that's a great way to frame it, and I think that's exactly what it was. Which isn't to say that the movie itself isn't interesting. It is interesting.
Yeah.
The characters are interesting. The story, as stripped down and been there, done that as it is still interesting. If you like that kind of story, you're still going to be interested. I was. The dialogue is terrific. The writing is good, and he did everything, mind you. He was the writer. He was the director. He was the editor. This movie is completely this guy's vision. It makes me excited to see what he does next. I would love for some studio to give him like $20 or $30 million and just be like, do
a Marvel movie.
Yeah, do it.
Could you imagine? He did a Marvel movie? How insane it would be.
I can imagine, because that's been Marvel's MO for the last several years. They're getting smaller directors.
Smart.
And giving them, like, smaller directors who have a vision and giving them this big budget. Though initially, I definitely want to see him do his own thing again with a larger.
Yeah.
I want to see more of what he can do.
I'm glad you got to watch it and enjoyed it, because I was, like I said, I've had movies on my list that I've been wanting you to watch, but when I watched this, I knew immediately. I was like, you got to see this.
Yeah, I'm not surprised that after seeing it, you thought to throw it my way, because
it was in my brain for like weeks, and I'm like, soon.
Yeah, it definitely checks all the buttons for me, no doubt about it. And I suspect, if given a chance, this guy has a genuine masterpiece in his future.
Yeah, I'm interested in looking back on this conversation in a couple years and see if we're right.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you and the family headed to the game? No, just me. Patricia's with the kids over in Hobbs. See you at the game.
Time for me to throw a movie at you.
Oh boy.
I'm gonna need you to block about 4 hours out of your schedule.
Oh, come on.
You're going to be watching the David Lean landmark film, Lawrence of Arabia.
We need a miracle.
They hope to gain their freedom. I'm going to give it to them.
The man who gives victory in battle is prized beyond every other man.
It's going to be fun.
Is it really that long?
Yes, it really is. So good luck with that. Watch it tonight, and we're going to be dealing with this first thing tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Leave a comment below. We are Tig and Eric, and thanks for hanging out at the movie club.